In ancient times, sailors believed that natural phenomena such as storms, winds, and currents were caused by supernatural forces. Deadly outbreaks and infectious diseases were also thought to be the wrath of the Creator. If you pay attention to all the myths, you would think that many of these supernatural forces of marine origin depict epidemic diseases, for this was the method often used to justify the cause of any disease occurring in ancient times when viruses and germs were not yet known, leading to hallucinations that were the source of supernatural powers or unusual creatures mentioned in legends. Bubonic Plague. Living conditions on the ships were not very good. In unhygienic environments, diseases appeared rapidly and spread at the same rate. The most important cause of this disease was mice transported in warehouses. The disease passed on to mice through infected fleas was also transmitted from mice to humans. This disease could also be passed on to the person in the feces of the flea or contact with the patient. The disease manifested itself within 2 to 8 days after the microbe penetrated the body. Among the symptoms of the disease, sudden back and low back pain, chills, vomiting, shortness of breath, weakness, skin spots, nosebleeds, inguinal pain, spitting blood, and persistent absent-mindedness have been observed. The lymph nodes of the person suffering from this disease were constantly swelling, and when bleeding occurred in the organs and under the skin, black spots appeared on the skin, causing the disease to be called the Black Death. The first major plague epidemic in the history of the world occurred in the 7th century on the Mediterranean coast. This disease was also transmitted to all port cities on the trade route in a short time. The ship, moving from any port due to illness, could not reach the point it wanted to go. Most of the crew were dying on the road due to illness. So much so that there were times when the entire crew died from the disease. This resulted in ghost ships wandering in the Mediterranean with no crew left on some ships. Because of the fear, no one could touch these ghost ships. When the outbreak could not be prevented in any way, isolation applications called quarantine were initiated and ships harboring illness were forced to draw a yellow flag. When one or more of the crew or passengers got sick, a yellow flag was hoisted on the ship, and nobody was allowed to leave the harbor for 30 to 40 days. Syphilis. Although the origin of the disease is not known exactly, it is widely hypothesized that syphilis was brought to Europe by sailors from Columbus' ships from the New World, who in turn contracted the disease from the natives of the island of Haiti. Many of them then joined the multinational army of King Charles VIII of France, who invaded Italy in 1494. This resulted in an outbreak of syphilis among his soldiers when they took Naples in 1495. Therefore, this disease was first named as French disease. It is believed that the main spreaders of the disease were prostitutes whose services were utilized by sailors and soldiers. In the following years, the disease spread to the Mediterranean shores due to heavy sea traffic. It was transmitted to the Far East by Vasco da Gama's expedition to India. A tumor called gumma occurs in the last stage of this sexually transmitted disease. The skeletal structure of the person becomes deformed and the body becomes very painful. If the disease is not treated immediately, there are disturbances in mental functions. In addition, in some cases, general paralysis is observed. The resulting situation eventually leads to death. Scurvy. Deaths have increased among seafarers as a result of malnutrition. The main sources of nutrition of the sailors consisted of pickled meat, dry rusks, and dried legumes. Fresh fruits and vegetables were taken to the deck when the ship reached the port, which could not be stored for long journeys. The journey across the ocean already took at least 4 or 5 weeks. During this journey, when the sailors were without vitamins, they had to fight a dangerous disease called scurvy. The first symptom of scurvy was fatigue. It was followed by recession of the gums, bruising of the skin, and hair loss. As the body was deprived of vitamin C for a long time, there was fatigue, weakness, loss of appetite, delayed healing of wounds, dry and cracked skin, swollen joints, and finally death. During the Age of Sail, a period that lasted at the latest from the mid-16th to the mid-19th centuries, it was assumed that 50% of the sailors would die of scurvy on a major trip. A Scottish surgeon in the Royal Navy, James Lind, is generally credited with proving that scurvy can be successfully treated with citrus fruit in 1753. Nevertheless, it was not until 1795 that health reformers such as Gilbert Blaine persuaded the Royal Navy to routinely give lemon juice to its sailors. James Cook put sauerkraut in the Seafarers' caravan for his second trip in 1772. Cabbage leaves, cut thinly and left in brine, were like a storehouse of vitamin C. The sauerkraut consumed in this way also protected sailors from scurvy. Sauerkraut has been replaced by marble lime over time. Beriberi. Another disease of sailors, called Beri-beri, also resulted from malnutrition. In Asian countries where the consumption of polished rice was high, this disease was common. Since the disease was first described by a Dutch physician named Jacob Benito's who served on the island of Java in 1630. Since there were wet and dry varieties, it was found that the disease was caused by a deficiency of vitamin B1, and this vitamin is a part of rice hulls. In the wet type of the disease, the heart muscle relaxes and the patient experiences weakness and swelling. In the dry type of the disease, the nerves leading to the major organs of destruction are damaged, and the patient has trouble walking. 169 of 376 people were infected after a 9-month mission from Japan to Hawaii in 1883. 25 of those who contracted the disease died. Ever since, a Japanese medical man who was in the Navy led to a solution to the disease with his discoveries, as it was found that the disease occurs in low-ranking crew who eat nothing but rice. Western sailors who had a Western-style diet did not suffer from this disease. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid. Drinking water on ships was usually stored in barrels. However, when traveling time increased, this water became undrinkable. To make the water last longer, vinegar was added to it before sailing. This method was temporary rather than long-lasting. Some sailors added alcohol to the water to make the water they were waiting for drinkable again. Diseases such as cholera, dysentery, and typhoid, transmitted through dirty food and dirty water, caused serious fatal outbreaks on ships. The bacteria were contained in untreated drinking water. This situation caused cholera. A person who contracted cholera suffered from diarrhea caused by the infection and then died. Stale water in barrels on the ship and seafood not kept under hygienic conditions also caused dysentery, a form of intestinal infection. These diseases prevalent on ships have faded into history. Gone are the days when these diseases claimed thousands of lives, but the yellow quarantine flag is still used rather symbolically.